Welcome back. You're watching Business at 9. Now, let's put the focus on what's really transpiring as far as Nepal is concerned, because the latest is that Nepal's former Chief Justice Sushila Karki will lead an interim government. In fact, the Nepalese President's office announced ending days of political uncertainty after the abrupt resignation of Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli this week, following widespread anti-government protests against a ban on social media and alleged corruption. Now, at least 51 people, including an Indian woman, have died in this week's violent protest, is what the police said on Friday, as new details of the extent of damages emerged. Now, Nepal's hotel industry, a vital revenue earner of its tourism-driven economy, has suffered a loss of over 25 billion Nepalese rupees after nearly 24 hotels across the country were vandalized, looted or torched during the protests. Of course, that is a significant development given what we're looking at here. And we'll take you through those details as well when she is sworn in to be taking over the new interim government while she takes oath. But let me take that across to my guest joining me this evening, Nalini Singh, senior journalist and managing editor of Nepal One TV. Ms. Singh, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here once again on ET. Now, given essentially what we're looking at here, after all that really transpired and this, swearing in that's going to be happening of Sushila Karki to be taking over, what I want to understand from your point of view, after all that really unfolded, how are we looking at this?
May I just correct you? We've had this extremely wonderful channel, Nepal One, which at the moment is, we've run it for about 2 decades. But let me just answer your question. So Nepal One, used to be wonderful. When you were talking about Sushila Karki, let's welcome the fact that the first woman Prime Minister, interim Prime Minister of Nepal is going to be taking oath. The second thing that comes to mind immediately is that I think it's taken long because Mrs. Karki has insisted on dissolution of the parliament because and of the state legislatures in all the 7 states because Sushila Karki will certainly not tolerate interference by political parties. And if you recall, she has had not very good relations with the Nepali Congress as well as the Maoists, that's the Prachand's party, who had initiated an impeachment against her. Because if I recall correctly, it was on the appointment of a police commissioner. She was not in favor of the person that they were appointing, etc., whatever. And then she had recommended somebody. So it went in for impeachment, but that impeachment was withdrawn. And I believe, I'm told that it was under public pressure, but also I'm told that because she was going to retire. So Ms. Karki has stood her ground, and she has stood her ground as Chief Justice, and she will be a rather strong person as an interim Prime Minister. But Nivedita, let us also celebrate one extremely important fact. I believe, and I hope I'm not wrong, that the swearing in is taking place in one of the grounds of the Sheetal Niwas, which is the President's residence. And we were told that Sheetal Niwas has been burnt down. But if in fact the swearing in is taking place there, that is a slice of Nepal's history being continued, because this is a very, very, very historic building. And the other thing is that President Ram Chandra Paudel is actually still the president. And, we were told yesterday there were unverified rumors that he had resigned. And could be wrong, but I'm told that there was a good suggestion from India also to him not to do so. So I think all in all, this is these are very good it portends well for coming back to some sort of normalcy, but there will obviously be dissolution. And whenever you want, I can talk about the fact that she's taking her oath under the Constitution of 2015. That's very, very, very critical. Because, may I continue, or would you like to ask a question?
Ms. Singh, yes, while you of course pointed out, just a quick correction, although Nivedita is a beautiful name, my name is Nivedana. And coming back to the point, of course, given what you're also speaking about here, which we will get speaking about that particular, that's okay. Talking about, that is one aspect. What I also want our viewers to essentially understand is, her prolific sort of sense of career as well, because, she was the first woman to serve as the Chief Justice is also what we're given to know. And with the current political situation that we've seen for Nepal overall, if you could draw that into perspective also while focusing on the point that you were just making now. And why that's crucial.
Yeah, the point that I'm making actually draws in what has happened in Nepal, and where it could again slide a little bit is that you have heard two voices in the last 3 or 4 days from intellectuals or from people in the know. One voice says that the Constitution of Nepal of 2015 is dead. The other one says, no, we are not going to waste all the 8 years that it took us to come to the Constitution. So it is very much alive, and we will abide by the Constitution. And Sushila Karki is going to take oath under the Constitution. Why is it important? If there were no Constitution today, then it is an open gate, an open door, an open road for the army plus the monarchy to come into play again. Because then if there is no Constitution, you can go back to status quo ante, you can go back to any other arrangement. And this, of course, is something that I'm pretty sure that the Nepali, the Maoists who fought to dethrone the monarchy, 207 years or even longer monarchy, they will not go by this. So there will be another undercurrent of unrest. So this Constitution that is going to be something that Sushila Karki is going to put her hand on and swear by the Constitution. I think that is very important. Things will remain, but she has asked for dissolution.
Right, Ms. Singh, while you point that out, what I just quickly want to ask you is, and take you back to, what really led to what we're looking at here with those protests, right? First, of course, there was a lot of anger, which we did see spill out on streets. Then, as far as that social media ban was concerned, it was later revoked. Do you think it was a tactical blunder that, in the sense, really went on to show that, the inflamed anger beyond control?
Nivedana, I have a slightly different angle that I have been looking at it through, which is, or a different lens, which is that you have a social media. Remember that the Nepalis are even more adept at the social media, at using it, than Indians are. The hippies had brought the email in the 1960s, so these are the grandchildren of that. So I just feel that when social media meets a disgruntled population, any section of the population, especially one which is easier to trigger off, as the youth, plus you have got a situation where you have got the Zuckerberg, may I say, and a disgruntled population. I think it's very easy to trigger this off into a fall of government. So,
right, Ms. Singh, although you're making those points, and I wish I had the opportunity to be talking to you further on this, I'm afraid we're running short of time. But thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast and putting that into perspective as far as that very crucial oath-taking ceremony that's going to be taking place and what that essentially means for Nepal going forward. But for the moment,
Nivedana, may I just say one more thing?
A lot more to be putting in focus tonight. I wish, Ms. Singh, but I'm afraid we don't have time. But of course, we'll get another opportunity to be discussing that. But as we, of course, go on to be discussing more aspects of what we do have on the show tonight, and before we wrap up, let's put the focus quickly Like you putting that into perspective, that former Chief Justice Sushila Karki will be leading the interim government and set to take oath. In fact, we'll be putting those visuals out on our screens as well, given what we're going to essentially look at in terms of that particular political change. But remember, this has been announced ending days of political uncertainty after the abrupt resignation that we saw of Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli this week, following widespread anti-government protests against a ban on social media and alleged corruption. At least 51 people, including an Indian woman, have died in this week's violent protest. This is what the police had said. Perspective that who is Sushila Karki? She is Nepal's interim prime minister, set to take oath very shortly. In fact, she's the first woman to serve as Chief Justice, began her professional journey as a teacher, known as fearless, competent figure as well, and part of 2006 constitutional drafting committee as well. In fact, appointed as ad hoc Supreme Court Justice in 2009. Let's also tell you that she was appointed as permanent Supreme Court Justice in 2010. Let's also put into perspective that she's not just known as a politician but background. She's also best known for that particular journey that she's had. So after all the turmoil that we of course saw in Nepal, with how the Gen Z of course took to the streets to protest, of course one sense of it was with those visuals that were playing on earlier, was the fact that Gen Z was upset about a slew of issues, including corruption as well, which led to what we saw in terms of the anger spill on streets. That particular visual, in fact, let's tell you, unfortunately, the number of reported deaths as well was staggering. Concurrently, we saw how Nepal's hotel industry, the vital revenue earner for tourism driven, was also hit very badly given that particular escalating situation. But now, with Sushila Karki taking oath, she has taken oath. In fact, a very significant development as far as this is concerned. Nalini Singh continues to stay with us. In fact, Ms. Singh, thank you very much, in fact, for taking the time out and joining me back on the show. There was lots to be discussing about this as well. We are given to understand that she has taken oath. Now, given, Nepal's, sort of situation that we've seen politically, and with this particular new change that has happened, what does it mean for Nepal now?
I think this is, Nivedana, the beginning of the restoration of some stability. One should not think that everything will be smooth. We've got the example of Bangladesh. They have an interim arrangement, but they have called elections also there. I am sure that Madam Karki will be calling elections, and actually, the fact that so-called Gen Z, the protesters, plus I think there is some sort of backing from the intellectuals and the army. So that fact that she's come fortified with this means a lot. She has a lot on her platter, that goes without saying. And besides the order that she was likely to pass, or I guess the Constitution allows her to pass this order just now to dissolve the parliament, or is it the parliament that will have to be convened and dissolve itself? I am not very sure about that, but that's a very significant step that will be required. One of these steps that we must not lose trace of, because of India being at the border, is that about 13,000 prisoners in jail, or is it 7,000 prisoners in jail have been freed or have freed themselves, and so now they're rampant all over the country, and some of them have also been caught trying to come into India. So that is one of the priorities that she will need to look at to establish law and order, but to establish people's trust and faith that the system itself has not burnt to cinders. That there is, that there is a person like her who will go all out, and of course she has supported the protesters, and because she's known not to be a great fan of the political parties, so I think that is also a ground that she will have to tread carefully on this side, because we should not assume that these political parties have vanished just because, unfortunately, their leaders have been treated so extremely badly that there are no words to condemn what the protesters did to Chalnath Khalal, former Prime Minister's wife. She was roasted alive. Sher Bahadur Deuba, Arzu Rana, his wife, the finance minister, etc.
So I'm sure that there are, of course, many challenges. In fact, as you speak about that, Ms. Singh, just quickly to put that into perspective for our viewers, we're looking at first visuals of what has just now developed for Nepal, given the fact that now Sushila Karki has taken oath. Ms. Singh, while we of course put out those first visuals, yes, that's the one playing out for our viewers to better understand. But I want to come back to the fact that there is so much now immediately that's on her plate, and rightly so. First things first, restoring peace, and more importantly, politically speaking, how this is going to pan out for them.
Yeah, restoring peace and politically. But before that, may I just say that Mr. Ram Chandra Paudel, the president in your visuals, looks fine, looks well. And that is a very reassuring sign, as well as I'm familiar with Sheetal Niwas, and this appears to be a banquet hall which has been salvaged, and also and if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the drawing rooms in Sheetal Niwas where the president meets people. So so one should correct oneself when somebody says that the entire Sheetal Niwas has been burned. It's like the president's house. So that means a lot. Now, in terms of how will this pan out, I think time and the fact that the Gen Z, I would say very controversial name that they've given themselves, but that the younger people are waiting for a corruption-free or a government, or at least an ecosystem where the head of the government is a crusader against corruption. This has happened in the past, but it's not an exaggeration to say that the top politicians in Nepal have been compromised, including those who came on the banner and on they had blown the bugle of a clean government, but unfortunately they fell into the quagmire of corruption and their children very quickly. So I think the first thing that she will do
in fact, is as you draw your perspective on that. Yeah.
So I would just say that.
And of course, now it remains to be seen how that's going to pan out, because Ms. Singh, ultimately, she's not just taken oath in this present circumstances, she's also Nepal's first woman prime minister. So there's, of course, a lot on her plate, and essentially how to navigate that and what will it mean for Nepal. That, of course, remains to be seen down the road. But thank you also very much for joining us. But before we wrap up, let's also put into perspective quickly the big development given travel advisory also. In fact, quickly quoting what Indigo has said here, that flight operations in Kathmandu have resumed and services are back to normal, because remember, for the past couple of days this was disrupted due to the situation. We'll continue to track that and a lot more here on ET Now, but for the moment, that's all that I have for you in this edition of Business at 9. Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. Good night.